We're going to make this happen.
Yep.
We are joined by Nick Wright of Fox Sports, who has gone back and forth with me via Twitter, and I appreciate the fact that he decided to pick up the phone and talk to us, and we welcome him to the show right now. Nick, thank you very much. How are you?
Yeah, but I'm glad to join you. I'm glad to talk to you guys. To be clear, though, we've never gone back and forth on Twitter. You called me a dick, and I said I'd come on the radio show. But I don't think I've ever tweeted to you once in my life.
That's my way. Yeah, thank you, Nick. That is my way. Tell them, guys, that's my way of showing love to somebody.
Oh, he's
right?
Italian, Nick. That's a show of affection.
No, I'm Italian too, and I understand the. Listen, I'm a Midwestern radio guy by trade, so I understand defending your guy. I just don't. I'm shocked that people's reaction to the fact that I have been 100% correct on Jokić for 2 years now is anger rather than resignation. So tell me, I'm just curious, and it's your guys' show, so we can do whatever you want. Tell me what exactly I've said about Nikola Jokić that you take issue with.
Let me start with this, because I think it all began last year when you called him one of the worst MVPs in the history of the MVP trophy, and it continued into this year. I believe, Nick, and listen, I know what you do for a living. We do the same thing. We all do this. I think you're protecting an argument you really don't believe, just to protect it. I think you've been doing this for months now, taking it to a point where it's almost laughable. Are you right and everybody else is wrong? I mean, the voters vote, and they have voted last year, and he will get it again this year. So is everybody else wrong, and you're right on this? I mean, at what point do you put your weapons down and say, okay, you got me?
Maybe when he wins a playoff game. But so let me answer all of this. So last year, I said I would have voted Jokić second if I had a ballot. I said I would have had Chris Paul first. I was told I was an idiot. And then, of course, Chris Paul swept him out of the playoffs. But I did say he was the worst player to win MVP since Dave Cowens. Now, again, the context there is if you get the 50 richest people in the world in a room, one of them is the brokest. It doesn't make them broke. It's just compared to, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and Tim Duncan and Giannis and LeBron, I thought he was the worst. Now, Derrick Rose maybe, Steve Nash maybe, but he was on the short list. That's what I said last year. I stand by that, by the way. I don't think he's better than David Robinson. I don't think he's better than Charles Barkley. I don't think he's better than Dirk, some of the weaker MVPs. That's what I said last year. And then this year, I didn't double down. That's what you have wrong. The analytics folks who have turned the NBA MVP award into an algorithm, they doubled down and said he had the greatest offensive season in NBA history and that he was a better defensive player this year than Joel Embiid. Both of those points are obviously wrong on their face. No one could actually watch the games and say, yep, Nikola Jokić this year, greatest offensive year ever, and yep, Nikola Jokić, a better defender than Joel Embiid. And the fact that we are now in the playoffs, and the first two games of the playoffs, he was bad. You want to argue he wasn't bad, I'd argue watch the games. He was bad, certainly by back-to-back MVP standards, and the response is, oh, he has no help. Guys, we've never had an MVP swept in the first round. We've never had an MVP on a 7-game playoff losing streak. We've had plenty of MVPs with bad supporting cast. So my point that Jokić is a top 10 player, but closer to 10 than to 1, it's just being proven out time and time again. So why? No, I'm not going to. It's not an argument that I don't believe. It's an argument that not only do I believe, but the history is going to look back on this. Let me ask you, 13 guys have won back-to-back MVPs in NBA history. I'll tell you them very quickly. Wilt, Russell, Kareem, Moses, Bird, Magic, Michael, Duncan, Steve Nash, remember him, LeBron, Steph, Giannis, Jokić. It's 13 guys. Jokić about to join the list. Do you think he is closer on that list to the 11 all-time greats or to Steve Nash? Because Steve Nash, we look back and we say he got it wrong.
Talk to me in 10 years.
I'm talking to you right now. I'm asking you
No,
right
I want you to
now.
talk to me in 10 years.
Nick.
when history is not made in the present. History is made when you can assess an entire career. Every single guy that you just listed, you can assess their entire career. And let me go back to something regarding Embiid versus Joker, because you're exactly right. Any sane person can watch both of them play and say Joel Embiid is a stronger, more stout defensive player. That's obvious. But to say that Nikola Jokic is not better defensively than he was last year is flat out wrong. He is in every category. He leads the team in steals, and he's continued to lead the team in steals. Man.
Improving your defense year over year does not a back-to-back MVP make. Again, this is the problem. This is the problem, and I understand the folks in Denver are very protective of their guy, and I respect that. But the problem is the burden of proof here is not on me. The burden of proof is show me how the guy who, again, we're breaking all the rules we've always had for MVP. We don't give him the 6 seeds. The one MVP we've given to a 6 seed in the last 40-plus years was Russell Westbrook, and that was a terrible vote. That's a vote history will not remember fondly. But at least Russ, by the way, in the postseason, improved his numbers across the board. They didn't go down across the board as they have with Jokic. But that was a bad MVP. We're breaking the rules here. And we're saying, no. And it's purely because the voters have now skewed to where it is purely a best PER contest. And as you're seeing in the postseason, there is regular season basketball and there's playoff basketball. Because if you think in this series Nikola Jokic has had a more impact than Draymond Green, I don't know what you're watching.
His numbers are better in the postseason than they were in the regular season, Nick. In the regular season, Nikola was 27, 13, and 8. He is scoring more. He's rebounding as much. He's doing more defensively than he did in the actual regular season. I'm not sure what you're saying. If Nikola Jokic plays his... I'm not wrong. I'm looking at the numbers right now. They're right in front of me. The only department that is not as high as it was in the regular season is assists. You know why? Because teammates are bricking shots.
And field goal percentage was his. Of course, no. It's listen. You're the back-to-back MVP. You're the best player in basketball. It's not your fault. It's a wonderful place to be in. It's not his fault. He's the best player in the league. It's not his fault. His field. So okay, his points per game now are a tick above where they were in the regular season after last night. That's true. The rebounds are dead even. In fact, I think it's actually a few percentage points lower, but I could be wrong. The assists, which are a huge part of what makes him so special, best passing big man ever, are down. And the other reason he's winning MVP is because he was 58% from the field this year. What is he in the postseason? Not nearly as efficient. What is his three-point percentage? Not nearly as efficient. So listen, you can do this for a living, but that doesn't mean you can fake the numbers. I'm not watching. I'm not watching what? What am I not watching?
You're not watching the games. You're not watching the games. He actually hit a pair of threes last night. The second half of the season, he couldn't make a single three. So you bring up three-point shooting, you're not watching the games. You're like every other media member who doesn't watch. You don't watch. You look at the paper, you look at the stats, whatever the hell you look at, but you don't watch the games.
You just told me, buddy, his numbers across the board are up from the regular season. You are wrong. They're down in assists. The rebounds are the same. They're down in field goal percentage. And tell me, you have the numbers. Is his three-point percentage this postseason higher or lower than it was in the regular season? Tell me.
He did not make us. Do you know how many threes he made in the last month of the season? In the last month of the season, 1 3.
Yes, I'm aware. He went in. It's one of the many reasons he shouldn't have been the goddamn MVP, buddy. But the idea that you don't tell me that my numbers are wrong when your numbers are wrong, and then say I'm only looking at the numbers. Like, that's not going to fly.
Wasn't your whole anti-Joker argument about numbers? You ripped the analytics guys, and now all you're throwing is numbers. I mean, you mean your argument is shooting percentage, field goal percentage? Is your argument this morning, Nick?
Pal. The only argument for him is the numbers, and my point is the numbers in the postseason are down. My argument is a simple one. You keep getting told by his contemporaries that they view him as a very, very good player, but there are 7 or 8 guys in the league that scare them more come the postseason, that scare them more come the damn All-Star game. And
this ain't Halloween, Nick. I don't care who scares whom. I care who beats whom. And guess what? He won 48 games with this cast. He won 48. Let me ask you something. You take Joel Embiid and you put him on this Nuggets team. How they doing against the Golden State Warriors in this series? How they doing?
Down 3-0.
They're down 3-0.
Yeah,
okay.
I agree.
So,
but if you put Joel Embiid on that Nuggets team, they wouldn't have been the 6th seed. That's the other problem here.
Really?
Other problem here. Yeah. Luka Doncic.
He won 48 games, partner. 48 games, dragging this team to the playoffs. The Golden State Warriors were without 2 of their max players the last 2 years. They didn't even make the playoffs. Didn't even make it.
So again, you're trying to. So here's the reason, and I understand why you have to do this. You're arguing points that I'm not arguing. Like all of a sudden, you're like, am I arguing Steph Curry's impact last year versus? No, I'm not doing it. So the Warriors missing the playoffs last year is totally irrelevant to the discussion. My point has been crystal bleeping clear. For 40-plus years, the NBA MVP has been awarded to a guy who has a legitimate chance at winning the championship, except with one exception, Russell Westbrook in 2017. We have now made it in back-to-back years for Nikola Jokic. That bothers me. Furthermore, we have, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, we do hold a guy. It's harder to win your second than your first. We tend to give ties to guys that don't have one, which is why it is such a short list of guys that have multiple and an even shorter list of guys who have won back-to-back. We have reserved that in NBA history for only the greatest of the all-time greats. I think Jokic checks neither of those boxes. You're saying check back with me in 10 years. Well, okay, I guess we can see what happens in 10 years. What I know is not going to happen in 10 days when they award this MVP is that Jokic is going to be in person to get it, because he's going to be riding that tractor back again in Serbia because his team's season's already going to be over. That's not good for basketball. It's not good for the league for your MVP to be out of the playoffs before he gets the MVP. What's disrespectful?
You're disrespectful. You're just tearing down a guy for the sake of your argument, and
I'm
I don't like the manner. I don't
guy.
like the way you do this. It's just disrespectful. It's probably why I called you what I did. I don't like the fact. I mean, come on, why you got to throw in these jabs at him? This guy's one of the classiest professional athletes I've ever met. Last night, he jumps to that podium and he thanks everyone. He gives his respect to Draymond Green, calls him a great player. He never once campaigned for the MVP. He didn't pull Embiid and look into a microphone and say, they must hate me. He didn't do that. He didn't go like every other guy out there campaigning for it. You know what he did? He sat back and he played the game, and he's going to get the hardware yet again. And guys like you that have to bust him all the time, I don't get it.
Well, it's not guys like me. It's really, there's not a lot of people doing it. Most people are not watching the games. They're just looking at the analytics, and they're like, well, he must be the best player in the league. I don't, why nobody seems to be afraid of him. I can't figure it out, but he must be the best player in the league. But that's the other thing in your tweet that you sent me. You called him one of the classiest guys in the league, which again shows, okay, that was an odd tweet to send, given the fact that in the guy's last 4 playoff games, he's been kicked out of 2 of them. It's just an odd thing.
So what? So you get kicked out of a game, you're not classy? You can't be classy because in the heat of the moment, in the spirit of the competition, you get teed up? How about your boy Draymond Green, who you can't wax enough about? How many tees has he gotten in his career?
And if you can find a tweet where I say Draymond Green, one of the classiest guys in the sport, then I will concede your point.
You just spent the last 15 minutes sucking all over Draymond. What are you talking about?
Did I call him classy, or did I say he was a great player? Like, listen, Vic, here's the deal, man. If this was a fair fight, if you were actually arguing something you had a chance of winning, you were going to struggle. Because if we're being totally honest here, there's probably not a person in the world better at this very specific type of interaction than me. It's a really unfair fight because you're arguing with emotion for your hometown team or the home listener team when you know deep down in your heart that yeah, of course, like Giannis is better and Embiid's better and Steph's better and Kawhi when he's healthy is better and and Luka's probably better. He's like the 7th or 8th best player in the league, and that's not good enough for you, or not good enough for the Nuggets fans. And so you have to stand on this soapbox.
No.
But
I'm not
you
playing
agree.
this game. I'm not playing this game. I know basketball.
Yeah, listen.
I know basketball, Nick.
Listen, we have to boogie. We're going to thank you very much for joining us on the program, for actually taking the time to do it, for
I do thank
your
you.
own
No,
horn,
seriously.
which is totally
I
fine.
thank you.
Which is totally fine. You honk your own horn. It's just that we see things, and we try to look at it, Nick, from not nugget-colored glasses. We just try to look at it. Oh, listen, hold on. I'm dead serious. We try to look at it overall. I mean, 2000, 1005. He's doing things. All you have to do is you can watch all the national shows, Nick. He does things that have never been done in the history of the game. Like this year, 2,000 points, 1,000 boards, 500 assists. He's doing things that are historically all-time number one, or hasn't been done since Wilt. Hasn't been done since Kareem. Hasn't been done since MJ and Oscar. I mean, these kind of things. And they stack up, Nick. They're there for you to see. But listen, we got a boogie. We appreciate your time. Hopefully, we'll be able to do this down the road, especially when the other two matches
I'll make you a deal.
Get back into the lineup.
I give you my word. My word. I will come back on the moment Jokic wins his next playoff series. So I'll probably talk to you guys in 3 years. See ya.
Later, Nick.
Goodbye.
My ass.
Yeah, he knows the game he's playing, man.